Welcome back, everybody, to another Purpose Served podcast episode. It's your legendary host, Darren Wingfield. I'm glad y'all are back with me for another one of these, man. Another one. We here. We here. If you're new to this podcast, this is your first time listening. This podcast is simply about inspiring you to be the best version of yourself that you can possibly be through innovating and improving the human experience. And on the spiritual level, honoring the two greatest commandments that was given to us, which is to love the Lord your God with everything you have and to love your neighbor as you love yourself. And by doing that, you will be making this world a better place, guaranteed. The mind and body problem was an interesting episode. It was an interesting episode. And it basically sums up what I've been thinking about and the problems that I've been trying to solve. So today, what I want to talk about, moving on past that, in this series of the monad, that single unit, is going on a theme of wholeness, being one within yourself and being one within the world that's around you. And just a friendly reminder to those that's been tuning in, and for those this is your first time listening to this, there's this twofold system that I've been talking about as of late. And I've always been talking about it, but I finally found the name for it, which is Bifarious system, twofold system. That's simply what it means. And to put into context, two worlds. That is the natural world, which I call the first world, and the second world, which I call the personal world or second world, whichever one. They're both one and the same thing. And the reason why I call the natural world the first world, because it's everything that came before us as a species of human beings. And the reason why I call the personal world the second world is because we are a byproduct of nature itself. And all of nature and us, the first and second world, is a part of God's creation. The first world we can look at from what I've been trying to understand deeply, which has been extremely challenging as of late for me mentally, is looking at it from a scientific standpoint. And then from the personal world, looking at it from a more spiritual standpoint. But both encapsulate the spiritual world and the uncreated light. And the uncreated light is God, the creator of all creation, which is creator of the natural world and everything that comes within it, and us, the personal world. And the natural world is anything from the cosmos as a whole, the whole entire universe, and everything within it, all the way down into an atom. And a personal world is anything from our mind to our body. And the mental realm is something that's of a different nature than the physical realm, because it seems like it's not confined and limited to space and time. Like your thoughts, you can do a lot of things within your imagination that you can't do in real life, and they seem just as real as this physical existence. So the biggest thing that I've been trying to look at is, where is the nature of these things like come from? But getting to the point, I digress. Today, I wanted to talk about the it's okay to be misunderstood. I'm going to give examples on here of people that were misunderstood historical figures, and also pointing out the nature of how true this is of people that go against the norm and the consequences of that. And don't be afraid to free your spirit due to the fact that you're aligning to the truth. And people that's living in darkness of lies is extremely deceptive. Find the truth within yourself, which is the light, and bring that out into the world. And the world is surrounded in darkness. So from the natural world, the first world, this is the first example that we are going to give. So, a while back, a couple hundred years ago, there was something interesting happening in the realm of science. There was a scientist by the name of Copernicus introducing the idea that the Earth wasn't the center of the universe, which at the time people thought that that was the case. People thought that everything, the sun and all the stars beyond, revolved around the Earth, and that the Earth was standing still and the Earth was not moving. Then here comes this guy Copernicus, who was observing the stars and observing the outer space, and was like, wait a second, we are not the center of the universe. We're a part of the universe, and we are going around the sun. And he had to pretty much do this in secret. But you had people out there that was deeply investigating the truth and wanted to know the truth about the world that we living in to get a better understanding of life, that investigated Copernicus and what his observation was that was going on in outer space, which is important. It's extremely important. Kepler was one of those people. Johannes Kepler, who was a mathematician, just like Copernicus, who was an astronomer, just like Copernicus. And he also was looking into stuff like astrology as well. So he missed the mark with a couple of things. But in the same breath, he was on point in discovering what scientists and astronomers still know to this day. But he was an interesting character. I want to read to you guys a section out of this book called Cosmos by a scientist, Carl Sagan, who was a legend. He was a legend. But he wrote a section in here describing what Kepler was like at a certain time period, but it also describes who he was as a person. Give me 1 second. Let me find it for you guys. Let me find it. So this is a description of what he was like. Kepler was a brilliant thinker and a lucid writer, but he was a disaster as a classroom teacher. He mumbled, he digressed, he was at times utterly incomprehensible. He drew only a handful of students his first year at Graz. The next year, there was none. He was distracted by incessant interior clamor of associations and speculations vying for his attention. And one pleasant summer afternoon, deep in the antithesis of one of his interminable lectures, he was visited by a revelation that was to alter radically the future of astronomy. Perhaps he stopped in mid-sentence. His inattentive students, longing for the end of the day, took little notice, I suspect, of the historic moment. So he was a guy dedicated to what he was doing. He was a guy deep in his thoughts about the nature of reality and the nature of the stars. He went from having a handful of students when he first was a professor and teacher, and in the following year, he didn't have any students at all. There's another person that I'm going to bring up as well that incidentally experienced the same exact thing that Kepler experienced. This goes to show firsthand that he was misunderstood. And he was a complex soul, an interesting soul. But that didn't matter to him. And he still stayed the course of the way. He still stayed the course of the way. The other person that I would like to bring up is Isaac Newton. That was another person that experienced the same thing. And in another section of this book, I'm going to read to you guys what it says. So, in this description, it says, Newton in his mid-40s was described by his servant as follows. I never knew him to take any recreation or pastime either in riding out to take the air, walking, bowling, or any other exercise whatever, thinking all hours lost that were not spent in his studies, to which he kept so close that he seldom left his chamber unless to lecture at term time, where so few went to hear him and fewer understood him that oftentimes he did in a manner for want of hearers read to the walls. So when nobody showed up to his class, he would still fulfill his contractual obligations and be reading to a wall. And once he got done with 15 to 30 minutes of his lecture time, he was going right back in his chambers to do some more studying, to do some more research, and to do some more experiments to better understand the universe. One of the most brilliant minds of all time. This is going to bring me to another point eventually, but another legendary sentence that comes from this chapter in this book, it says students both of Kepler and of Newton never knew what they were missing. You guys had that deep down within you guys. And even if you don't see the benefits, the rewards, and success in your lifetime, you still have to go through. I encourage you guys highly to go through, even at the cost of being misunderstood. Because eventually, the truth always stands the test of time. It always stands the test of time. Galileo, who I mentioned not too long ago, he was on the same type time as Kepler, based off of them looking at Copernicus and saying that the sun was the center of our solar system and not necessarily the universe, and that the planets within the solar system were orbiting around the sun. A lot of people did not like that at the time, based off of what the masses were conditioned to believe. Based off of the teachings of Aristotle and Plato, which a lot of education was centered around during those times, which I want to say is around the 15th and 1600s. And when it comes to changing, especially something that major, which the people were believing in without questioning, you're going to get met with a whole lot of resistance, which these people did. In a time of Kepler, he was dealing with a lot of things that was going on within the country itself, right? And there was civil war that was going on in his land, which caused him to leave his land to go somewhere else, to further his education, and it was by fate in his studies. It was by fate he got offered a teaching job to a guy that was later on that was going to help him with his observations. That it took a lot of time for things to transpire due to the fact that he was being met with resistance along the way. His whole entire life, actually. He got exiled from the city that he was staying in because of the things that was going on, and it was like kind of a witch hunt. And his mom was accused of being a witch, and she was on trial, and it was looking to torture her and put her to death. And due to his analytical mind and scientific mind, he came up with a defense for her to escape death, essentially speaking. But they had to leave. Galileo was another person that experienced similar things. And the craziest thing is, all of this stuff was coming from the church. And these people, Galileo and Kepler, were believers in God, going against other people who believed in God as well, but took the teachers in of people that were polytheistic and not monotheistic. And this world is twisted like that. Man, the complexities of life is insane. It really is insane. But Galileo was put under house arrest due to the fact of him not backing down with the beliefs that he had on what he observed. And all his life, Galileo had a habit that was good in its nature, but it oftentimes backfired of questioning everything and everybody. Even questioning the teachers that taught him what he knew, and question what they believed in their truth to get him closer to the truth. And like I said, the truth stand the test of time because these two are embedded in history. And speaking of somebody that questioned everything, was Socrates. His big thing was know yourself, know thyself. And he questioned everything because he believed that he didn't know the truth. And if he walked around assuming that he knew the truth, he was going to miss out on a whole lot and walk through this life blinded. Socrates is somebody that I brought up because one of the analogies that I use all the time of going from a state of ignorance to enlightenment comes from the book Republic, which I have right here. Well, this ain't it. This is Basic Writings of Nietzsche. Friedrich Nietzsche. But the Republic. And one of the books, I believe, is book 7. Well, for the most part, you guys are like listening to me. But I believe in book 7 of the Republic, there's the story of the allegory of the cave. And climbing out the cave of darkness and reaching the light. And 2 states of blindness that you have to get through. And that's the darkness that's of the cave and the actual sunlight that's going to like blind you in itself. So you're getting blinded by the darkness, and you also can get blinded by the light. And it's so profound. It's even deeper wisdom than that. That's just me saying it in a nutshell. But no, a lot of people did not respect Socrates. He had a handful of students that held him in high regard, like Plato being one of them, and other figures, historical figures. And a lot of things that Socrates said, he didn't write down from what people know, and is just accounts from other people, for example, Plato. But people would beat him up in the street. They would not take what he's saying seriously. They didn't see him as a threat. They described him as a ugly looking dude, a weirdo. But eventually, over time, due to some significant things going down, they felt as though that he was responsible for corrupting the youth based off of his teaching style and the influence that he had over his students. And due to the corruption that was going on, they decided that they was going to put him on trial and sentence him to either exile or death. And at a certain point, he had a choice. But he decided that he was going to go with death. As something in him knew that he reached the end of the road, and within him he knew not to question that thing that told him that don't fight against it. This is what you have to do. And he accepted his death willingly and did nothing to escape his fate, because he knew it was just fate. And they made him drink poison. So he drank the poison and he checked up out of here, but he was willing to die on the hill of the truth and went against the grain. And I hope you guys seeing the connecting theme here of going against the masses, going against what the public think. It will come with pain. It will come with some sort of turmoil somewhere down the line. It will come with afflictions. But you have to get past the temptation in order to not succumb to people devilish and evil ways that, for the most part, they are unconscious to. I don't really think it's people's true nature to try to mislead other people. But a lot of people have a problem thinking for themselves. A lot of people have a problem loving their neighbor as they love themselves. And a lot of people are filled with pride and anger. And once those emotions arise, they're going to act off of them because they don't know nothing else. And they don't have a sense of peace within themselves to know that all of us as a whole are individuals within ourselves. And we come together to form one race and one species. And we like to look at it as, like, for example, he white, he black, he Asian, and all of that, when that really doesn't matter. It's stupid. And the only reason why I say that it's stupid is if you go from a bird's eye view and you're looking at the world, this planet from the moon, can you see the turmoil that we in? Can you see the disease that we have? The death. Us killing each other. The mental anguish that we experience, the depression, the sadness, the loneliness. Can you see that from the perspective of the moon? What you would see, in the words of Carl Sagan, is this pale blue dot just moving along, floating through this vast amount of darkness with little twinkling stars in the background. That's what you would see. And this place is delicate and we don't treat it as such. We don't understand the makings of how long it took for us to get to this actual point. And what had to come to be in order for us to be where we are right now. And you have to really investigate the natural world and investigate yourself to see how you can harmoniously align with that. Going on to, I think that who's one of the most important people in history, spiritually and physically, is Jesus Christ, who dealt with this issue firsthand, through and through, all the way through, from the time of his birth all the way to 33 years later when he died on the cross and carrying the burden and sins of all of humanity with him. And not only that, being an individual the whole entire way and not falling in the trap of the wickedness that was laid out around him. There's two different scriptures that I'm about to read from. It's about to get biblical. Yeah, it's about to get biblical. Indeed. I believe I read to you guys from John. I believe so. Give me 1 second. But I'm going to read it again. It says, let me go to it. Bear with me. Bear with me. It says, the true light, which gives light to everyone, was coming into the world. He was in the world, and the world was made through him. Yet, the world did not know him. He came to his own, and his own people did not receive him. But to all who did receive him, who believed in his name, he gave the right to become children of God, who were born not of blood, nor the will of the flesh, nor the will of man, but of God. The one thing I want to highlight here is verse 11, where it says, he came to his own, and his own people did not receive him. This was the theme of his life. This is the theme of today's podcast episode, which is be okay with being misunderstood. And there's a particular scripture that I also want to read from, which is a prime example of this. So, in Luke chapter 4, verse 28 through 30, it says, when they heard these things, all in the synagogue were filled with wrath. And they rose up and drove him out of the town and brought him to the brow of the hill on which their town was built, so that they could throw him down the cliff. They was looking to kill us, man. And I'm going to tell you beforehand the context of all of this. Jesus got done coming out the wilderness, dealing with his solitude, being tempted and tested by the devil. And then he begins his ministry. And he was in Nazareth when this happened, the town that he was raised in. And these people looked at him as if he was crazy after he said what he said. So I'm going to read, chapter 4 is really, really important. So before that point of him getting thrown, them threatening him, throw him off the cliff or whatever, it says that he came to Nazareth where he had been brought up, and as was his custom, he went to the synagogue on the Sabbath day, and he stood up to read. And the scroll of the prophet Isaiah was given to him. He unrolled the scroll and found the place where it was written, the Spirit of the Lord is upon me because he has anointed me to proclaim good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim liberty to the captives and recovering of the sight to the blind, to set at liberty those who are oppressed, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor. And after he gets done doing this, he rolls the scroll up and goes to sit down. And everybody in the synagogue is staring at this dude. The eyes are glued onto him. And he then tells them that what you hear in your ears is being fulfilled today. And for some odd reason, the people did not like that. This is when pretty much all hell broke loose. They were filled with wrath and it was filled with anger. And I just read to you guys earlier, it was his own people. For the most part, it'd be your own people to do you dirty. So This leaves me with the 4 stages of intention, which I say is like extremely important to understand. In order for you to become whole, you need to understand that there's a balance of two things that's at play, and that's what's going on inside of you and also what's going on outside of you. And no matter what's going on inside of you and outside of you simultaneously, you still have to follow the way. Still got to follow the way of truth. And today, most people are focused on outside things of achieving some sort of wealth, fame, or whatever. And it leaves them empty when it's all said and done. The intention compass has you focus on what the truth of your idea is and a plan to get it out, which is both inner experiences, and then on the opposite end, the outer experiences is the behavior that you must take in that regard and the setting that it must take place in. You have to balance out those two things. And excluding Jesus from this, because he didn't really need the intention stages because of the source that he was connected to. Which I highly suggest that you guys connect to that same source in that same vein. But at the end of the day, if you're trying to achieve a goal that requires you to develop a skill, then the attention compass will be helpful when it's all said and done. Don't be stayed away because you are discouraged in any sort of way. Don't be discouraged because of the fears that you are having and the doubts that you're having. Like I always say, observe where those things is coming from and move in the opposite direction of those things. Don't listen to it. Just simply observe it and still take action regardless. All the people that I just named are examples of what it means to truly be yourself in a world that wants your demise. All of these individuals that I just named served their purpose. They reached the end of the line and they did everything that they had to do to make a difference within themselves and also to make a difference within the world. And every last one of us is capable of doing that. Every last one of us is capable of being great at some sort of capacity. It's possible. Don't fall in the trap of mediocrity. And by doing that, you will be on your way towards greatness and you will be on your way to being whole and complete. And it's a lifelong process and it's a lifelong journey. We are in a transitory state. And what do I mean by that? While we are in this physical body, we're having a spiritual experience and we're going from one state to another. Everything in this physical universe is in a transitory state. So don't give in to the will of your body, but just simply align with what your purpose is in the spirit of truth. And if you do not know what your purpose is, seek solitude. And be still and quiet yourself down to really understand who you are and what you have to do in this world. And it's possible. It's only impossible when you are distracted and you constantly keep distracting yourself. That's an uncommon trait nowadays is people focusing in with laser-like focus on themselves and on the world around them. Don't just solely focus on yourself, but also focus on the world around you. And the reason why I constantly bring up nature as well and do the best that you can to get out there is your body gets in sync to that rhythm. The more you get used to it. We are accustomed to living in an artificial place. get closer to nature, and by getting closer to nature, getting closer to your nature, and you're also getting closer to the truth. And by getting closer to the truth, you're getting closer to God. That's the recipe. Until next time, we're going to talk about the purpose served pyramid and the base of the pyramid, and how does that lead to well-being in itself. Thank y'all for listening. Serve purpose. The deuces.